Russia and China should never trust India, but why? There are several reasons why it's difficult to trust India. But the main reason is India's growing ties with the West, especially America. India's evolving geopolitical and defense strategies reflects its shifting priorities in an increasingly multipolar world. India's strengthening ties with the West, especially America, have made it difficult for Russia and China to fully trust its intentions. India has grown more concerned about China's expanding military and economic influence, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. India also has ambitions to be a major regional power like China. However, since it lacks the resources to match China on its own, India has moved closer to the US and other Western countries. A key example of this is India's involvement in the Quad, a military alliance similar to NATO that includes the US, Japan, Australia, and India. In the early 2000s, the US was heavily focused on conflicts in the Middle East, which distracted it from the growing influence of China in the Asia Pacific. China's rising economic power weakened the US's traditional role in the region. Over time, the US has pursued a strategy to limit China's influence by forming closer ties with countries nearby. Its partnerships with Japan, Australia, and India are central to this strategy. However, building a strong military relationship with India, US-India military cooperation began to increase in 1991 after India opened up its economy. The head of the US Army Pacific proposed military cooperation between the two nations, leading to many joint exercises. These developments, along with the formation of the Quad, are efforts to contain China. For countries like Russia and China, this closer relationship between India and the West is a concern. Russia has long been a key partner for India, especially in military matters, and China views India's cooperation with the US as a challenge to its security. While Russia isn't directly involved in Indo-Pacific disputes, it worries about losing India as a strong ally as India develops stronger defense ties with the US and Europe. India's defense strategies reflect this shift. In the past, Russia was India's top supplier of military equipment, including fighter jets and missile systems. But India has been diversifying its sources, buying more weapons from the US and Europe to reduce its reliance on any one country. India's defense partnerships with the US has grown significantly, with deals for advanced aircraft and missile systems, through initiatives like the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative. The US and India are also collaborating on defense technology and innovation. At the same time, India has been buying more weapons from European countries like France and Israel, further broadening its defense relationships. This shift has made Russia uneasy, as it sees India turning toward the West for military supplies. Although India still maintains strong defense ties with Russia, such as purchasing the S-400 missile defense system, Russia is closely watching India's increasing defense deals with Western nations. And this is really interesting. India's goal of becoming a global power has led it to adopt a multi-vector foreign policy, which means it works with many different countries to advance its own interests. This strategy allows India to be flexible and pragmatic, not committed to any one power bloc. While India has strong historical ties with Russia, especially in defense and energy, it is also building relationships with countries like the United States, Japan, and Europe. And not just economic partnerships like China, no, but also military partnerships. And this is the main reason why Russia and China cannot trust India, at least fully. This helps India get economic and technological benefits from different sources, while also securing its security and geopolitical goals. For Russia and China, India's varied foreign policy can be challenging. India maintains its defense cooperation with Russia, but is also an important partner in the Quad, a group led by the US. And this makes India a somewhat unpredictable partner, as its interests often clash with Russian and Chinese goals, which is decoupling from the West. For instance, as we mentioned earlier, while India buys military equipment from Russia, it is also investing in advanced technology from the US and Europe to upgrade its military. Even though India is part of BRICS with China, it often competes with China, especially over border disputes and regional influence. China has several reasons to distrust India, but the most significant being their ongoing border dispute. The origins of the India-China border dispute can be traced to the late 19th and early 20th century, when colonial powers delineated borders in Asia. The British colonial administration in India and the Qing dynasty in China drew lines that were never fully agreed upon by the successor states. The most contentious areas include Aksai Chin, a high-altitude region claimed by India but controlled by China. The 1962 Sino-Indian War, a direct consequence of these unresolved border issues, was a pivotal moment in the relationship between the two nations. The conflict erupted when Chinese forces advanced into Indian territory, leading to a brief but intense war. The war ended with a unilateral ceasefire by China. The LSC, established as a result of the 1993 and 1996 agreements between China and India, was intended to serve as a practical boundary for maintaining peace and stability. Unlike an international border, the LSC is a loosely defined area where both sides have differing perceptions. This lack of clarity has contributed to frequent skirmishes and misunderstandings. The LSC stretches across several disputed regions, including the Western Sector, Aksai Chin, the Central Sector, and the Eastern Sector. Despite various agreements, the LSC remains a contested area, with periodic incursions and confrontations. In recent years, the situation along the LSC has become increasingly tense. The Galwan Valley clash in June 2020 marked one of the most severe confrontations in decades. Indian and Chinese troops engaged in a violent clash, resulting in casualties on both sides. Final thoughts. India's relationships with both the West and the East is the main reason why China and Russia cannot trust India. It seeks its own interests, economic and military, regardless of the tensions between Russia and the West or China and the West.